This video covers the overview of the multi-system setup from the Deluxe Bundle kit. The only thing you're going to need is a single screwdriver. Okay, let's get this unpacked. So we use recycled packaging here. So if we just get this unpacked, you'll find a bag. So you can put your packaging to one side. Please recycle if you can. And here is your multi-system. So here's the Multisystem FPGA retro gaming console. You will need to open up the case, but it's very simple. First thing you do is remove these two thumb screws at the back. They just unscrew as shown, and when you get them to about that point, you can pop the back of the case off. Put that to one side, take out your pack of parts. We'll be using those in a minute. And the only other thing you need to do is remove the front. So put your screwdriver into the front hole and unscrew a 20mm M3 screw. Do the same on the other side. It's right next to where the little rubber feet are. Okay, so once you've done that, you can lift the top off. This piece is a cartridge cover. I'll show you how to use that in a minute. Okay, so now you've got your multi-system. You can open your bag of parts. That's another smaller cover for when you're using cartridges. Okay, so the main things you get in the bag, you get a heatsink and you get 3 screws. The only other thing to do, first of all, is to remove this HDMI bridge board. So you just gently pull that out and just put that to one side. It's quite important that you remove that. Do be aware that this small red reset button does actually pop out. So if you accidentally lift the unit up, it might fall out. So try not to lose that. Now you need to choose whether or not you use the MisterPi, which is a FPGA based evaluation board used on this multi-system console, or you use the original from Terasic, which is the DE10 Nano. They both do the same function, but they do require different cables for each one. So with the Terasic part, you need this smaller micro USB cable, and with the MisterPi, you need this USB to USB cable. Okay, so assembly is really quite straightforward. First of all, we're going to do it with the Terasic DE10. All we need to do here is to plug one connector into here and the other Ethernet connector into there. They just click into place. Do the same with the micro USB and put this one into the board. Can be a little fiddly, and you just got to make sure you've got USB up the right way, as usual with USB. Okay, you can just bend that cable so it slots down around there, and then all you need to do is bend these cables over, just keeping them tucked in, and they bend on a 90-degree angle in a slight curve. And then the really important thing to do now is to make sure you get all of these pins, there's 40 pins on each side, lined up with the 40-way connectors. They'll also line up with these posts and these holes, so it's quite easy to spot if you've got it wrong. You just gently lay the board down, and once you've got it in place, you can push down on the board. They only go down as far as the connectors will allow, and then you're all in place. That's it. Just check you've got everything lined up. So this is plugging this side into the memory unit and this side into all of the I/O expansion that's on the board. Okay, so the next stage is to put 3 screws in. You'll have noticed on this board it did actually have a heatsink fitted. We do supply a heatsink, and that's to make sure that your FPGA board stays nice and cool. So you can actually fit that, stick that onto there. I'll show you how to do that when we use the MisterPi board. So now what we need to do is screw one into this corner. One into this corner. And one just over here. And they should go straight in nice and easy. If there's any misalignment, you shouldn't be able to get that in the hole. There isn't one on this side, and we don't use a spacer on there anymore because it just makes it a bit easier to get all of these other cables in, especially with the MisterPi unit. Okay, so just check everything is nice and secure and all your cables are in. Make sure you put your reset button back in if you've took it out, just to be on the safe side. Okay, and now you can reassemble your case. So you want to pop this on the front. This little fuse just might get in the way. You can just bend it slightly just to get it fits into that little slot in there. So pop that one down and put your screws back in. Okay, last thing to do before you put the back cover on is to put your HDMI bridge board back on. This sits between the two HDMI connectors from the Terasic DE10 onto the multisystem. You just need to push that in and make sure it clicks, and you can't push it any further. You can also change the connector for the fan. It's on 3.3 volts standard. If you want a little bit more powerful fan, you can put it on 5 volts. You can also disable the fan if you wish. So if you decide to use the MisterPi instead of the original DE10 Nano, we supply a heatsink to go onto this board, which you can take out of its little plastic bag, pull off this blue film, and that's a very sticky surface. You just need to line up onto the main FPGA and push down gently. When that heats up, it'll activate the sticky pad and it'll become nice and solid. But it's a really good thing to do to make sure that you've got a well-cooled Mister board. So you do the same fitting with the MisterPi board as you would with the original D10 Terasic board, but you have to change this cable or fit the other cable instead of the mini USB. You need to fit the USB A to USB A. So push this one into the board and move that connector around. Push that in, making sure you've got it the right way around. Okay, and then we do the same thing. We line up the 40-way connectors. So we line up the 40 ways with the 40-way mating side. And just gently push down. Okay, this is a bit of a tight fit with this cable, but it is okay. It fits into the housing, and there is clearance for this small 4-way connector as well, which you can use in a different configuration. So just make sure everything's nice and tight on there, and you've got all your cables tucked in and around. And then we put our 3 screws in again, one in this corner, one in this corner, and one in this corner. Without one in this corner, it makes it much easier to fit and remove this if you ever need to in the future. Okay, when you got that screwed down, make sure you put the HDMI bridge board back in, otherwise you won't get any HDMI out from the back panel. That drops it down from the MisterPi board onto this main multi-system motherboard. There are some isolation switches here for HDMI if you run across any problems with CEC interference. You can actually isolate a lot of the CEC and other pins on the HDMI connector just by pushing these down. Normally you'd leave them all up. Okay, now the same as before, we can fit our front panel and screw in. and fit a back panel. Screw in at the back. Everything clicks in. And then choose whether to put a large or small cartridge slot on. Okay, that's your multi-system all ready to go. Let's get this connected up and configure our software. Heber also sells a growing range of cartridges which allow extra functionality. So if you want to do that, pop your cartridge dust flap in, and then you can use any one of a number of different cartridges to get different functionality out of the system. This is really useful if you're using specific cores and you want to use real controllers or various other interfaces. So for example, this is the PlayStation. Take the cover off, push down, and you now have a 2-port PlayStation with composite sync signal for light guns. So that can use the light guns. This is also compatible with the mouse, the PlayStation mouse, and the PlayStation multi-tap if you want to have more controllers all plugged in at the same time. So that's the PlayStation. There's also one for Saturn, which allows you to turn this into a Saturn-based console. We have one for the Super Nintendo. Again, plugs in, allows you 2 ports, and again this operates with the mouse, the Nintendo mouse, Super Nintendo mouse, and the Super Nintendo multi-tap, and many other peripherals as well. We also have a 4-port Nintendo 64 cartridge, which you can plug in, and now you have a 4-player Nintendo 64 console. That again allows you to plug in various different Nintendo peripherals for the Nintendo 64. On the interface cartridges, we also have the PC Engine. This is a 5-port PC Engine control interface. It has the multi-port adapter all built into it. This is really great if you want to use games like the 5-player Bomberman on the PC Engine. Finally, we have 2 very specific cartridges. This is a Super Video custard cartridge, which allows you to get Super Video and composite video and analog audio out of the system. And there's no configurations. If you've got it set up to do standard SCART output, this will convert to Super Video and composite video, as well as phono audio. There's a few switches on the front that allow you to select whether you want to use with VGA output connections or as on its own, and whether you have NTSC or PAL. Finally, the last cartridge is an MT32Pi cartridge. This is for the very popular MT32Pi project and allows you to get Roland MT32 sound recreation on the Mister and Multisystem consoles. So certain cores are compatible with this add-on, and it allows you to have the Roland MT32 sound card all synthesized on this module. All of these cartridges, along with a cartridge holder, is available in our store.